Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast, joined by Chief Sports Writer Lee Ryder. Lee, Sunday is a huge game for Newcastle United, and the build-up and preparation was already, there was lots of focus on it because of the injuries to Miguel Almiron and Alan St-Maximin, and we'll discuss that in due course. But of course, the last 24 hours, big news about a training ground bust up between Matt Ritchie and Steve Bruce in the aftermath of that 1-1 draw with Wolves. Can you just explain to our listeners and viewers just your latest understanding on developments and what the club have said about it?
Well, on the record, Newcastle have said nothing, which is, that's not unusual. That's what gets said normally with this. But there's been certainly no denial that there's been crosswords said between the pair, and obviously something has gone off at the training ground, and I think most people can sort of imagine what would happen in that situation. The pressure's on Newcastle at the minute; they're not getting results. I think Monday night with Jamie Carragher on Monday Night Football was fascinating television to watch it all broken down as slowly as that, and hear a former pro talk his way through it. And I think that magnified the problem. And the big problem for Steve Bruce was that all comes, before he's had a chance to speak to the players. He gave them 2 days off, 48 hours to cool down from Wolves. It's backfired because obviously the players needed to speak. They wanted to have the say. They couldn't do it. Training didn't resume till Tuesday, and they've been subject to a lot of criticism on social media because of it. But it's one of them where when Newcastle are in a relegation struggle, something like this always crops up, and it's not the first time. There was certainly problems in 2016 behind the scenes, with players arguing with staff, etc., and same in 2009 as well. So it's not something new to me, because I'm probably a veteran of several relegation battles. But yeah, it's made the headlines today, and Newcastle go into this game with headlines for the wrong reasons.
I think to many people, it wasn't really surprising that something of this sort came out, because for many, when they heard Steve Bruce, for want of a better phrase, essentially chuck Matt Ritchie under the bus with his comments after the Wolves game, many people were a bit like, is that really the right move, regardless of whether he's right in what he says, the instructions didn't come across? Do you maybe need to keep that behind closed doors and just say, no, we win as a team, we lose as a team, and we've drawn here? Were you surprised, when you got told about this bust up on the training pitch, given Steve Bruce's comments over the weekend?
No, not really. I think he's switched strategy in his press conferences in the last few weeks, where at the start of the season, if you go back to a couple of defeats, then he was being very nice and complimentary about the players, and talking about other things like bad luck and injuries and COVID. But now he's actually naming and shaming players if they get something wrong, and maybe it's a different method from him. Regardless of what's said on social media, it's a tough job. Doesn't matter who you are, Rafa Benitez, Steve Bruce, Bobby Robson. They've all had their ups and downs in the job, and world class players such as Ruud Gullit came into the job, Alan Shearer. It's an unbelievably difficult job, and that's not making excuses for anybody. But the problem is when things aren't going right, the spotlight is switched onto you, and I think I genuinely think Steve Bruce is feeling the heat at the moment.
I've seen a few people say after working with Matt Ritchie for so long, you would kind of hopefully realize that he's maybe the wrong person to name publicly about making a mistake. I guess though, we've been told that he's apologized and it's been dealt with. The club consider it closed, or at least that's what sources are saying. Do you think though, Lee, and given your experience covering Newcastle United, can that be the case given the mess that Newcastle find themselves in? Fighting for safety, they can't win for love nor money. Can something like this, a bust up of this magnitude, just be swept under the carpet, or it's closed now?
Well, they've got to focus on the game. There's no doubt about it, because if they don't and they get beat at West Brom, then they are in serious danger. They're in serious trouble at the moment. But they have to draw a line on it at some point. They can't just be bickering through it. It looks like they have already, because Ritchie trained yesterday, he's trained today, and we'll see where they are in terms of team selection at the weekend. But I mean, a bit of context. Matt Ritchie's not, as you say, he's not the type of guy to keep his mouth shut. And at the end of the day, he will flag up anything he sees as a problem. We've all had dealings with him, good, bad, indifferent, but always the one thing, no matter what you talk to him about, is he's very passionate, he's very animated, and at the end of the day, I think that's what's happened here. You wanted an answer earlier on why Steve Bruce went down the road he did, and he had to wait until Tuesday, and then I think it's come to a head at the training ground, which happens. It happens all the time at training grounds. There's no doubt about it. If someone doesn't get in the team or someone's criticised, then Monday morning, Tuesday morning, they'll be knocking on the manager's door for an explanation. It's happened before. Famously, I think Alan Shearer wanted to gently open the door and speak to Ruud Gullit back in the day after the Sunderland game. But when he got there, I think Duncan Ferguson had already kicked it off the hinges. So it's one of them where if you manage a Newcastle United, you're going to be there to be shot at, I guess. And he's now got to get everyone calmed down. He hasn't got a lot of selection, room for selection with so many players injured. Matt Ritchie's only played 12 games this season as well, so he's going to be frustrated about that. He nearly went to Bournemouth in January, and here we are going into March. He's played 12 games. He'll be frustrated. He'll be wanting to get this right on the pitch. So hopefully he can channel his frustration in the right way at the Hawthorns.
The comment there from Tell Magpie Ross: the comments against the players should G them up, and it should make them want to fight to prove their class. And I guess some might say that's what Steve Bruce was trying to do, and that's vitally important that they do step up this Sunday.
Absolutely. I mean, Steve Bruce got a big result at the Hawthorns last season in the FA Cup. I think he went into it on the back of a similar spat with sort of journalists and players, and got the result, which got them through the cup quarterfinals. Obviously, things didn't work out for the better after that. But West Brom, they're struggling. They've got to win at the weekend against Brighton, and this is a big game for both clubs. It's probably end of the road if West Brom don't win. For Newcastle, it would just give them the lift that they so desperately need, and it's certainly a winnable game, even with all them players unavailable for Newcastle. They've got players who can step onto the pitch and make a difference.
A lot of people asking in the comments about the players having days off. They had a couple of days off after the Wolves game, obviously not back to train until Tuesday. A lot of people saying, when you are in the middle of a relegation battle, is that really the right, course of action to take? Should the players not be in, every day trying to work together and trying to turn this around? Because they're not only trying to achieve safety, they're also trying to actually just pick up some points, because they have only won, 2 in 15 Premier League games. So do you think having so many days off is a good approach to take?
Well, I think there'll be sports science comes into it as well. This stage of the season now, we're on the last lap of the season, and all the behind the scenes guys will have heart monitors, things like that, which will tell them that he could go in the red zone if he trains too much today, etc., etc. So some of it will come down to that. I personally think he gave them the extra day off to try and probably clear his own head a little bit, and assess how he wants to work with the players. So it's not massively unusual, but there has been other occasions where they've been straight back in the next day. Such as the Brentford game, I think they came straight back in the next day. They didn't have any rest or cool off or anything like that. So, but I think it is the stage of the season where, and that's not defending anybody, it is normal that they will have that little bit of extra recovery time, going into games at this point. So, he's still had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday to work with the players. So it's not like they've missed out. They're going to have five or six good sessions. So we'll see if it pays off. And I'm sure even people like Graham Jones will just want to get on the pitch with the players and work with them. Things have, I mean, the Wolverhampton Wanderers game, it was a big improvement. They should have won the game. There's no doubt about it. They created so many chances, but for the cutting edge, they would have had 3 points under the belt, and we wouldn't be having this conversation about Matt Ritchie kicking off, because if you win, you can almost say whatever you want, but when it's an iffy result, then questions always get asked.
So obviously Miguel Almiron and Alan St. Maximin will be missing for the game against West Brom. They're already missing Callum Wilson. I mean, the news there, Lee, of Miggy and St. Maximin missing until April. Just what's your feelings on that? Because I mean, that's a huge blow for Newcastle United, isn't it?
It's a big blow, no doubt about it. But I think there's still players who can come in and do a job. Dwight Gale is there. He should be, raring to go. Andy Carroll raring to go. Ryan Fraser, especially, he's hardly played. I mentioned it last week that he looked like a player to me who thought he'd made a mistake. We got a response from him, didn't we, on Saturday night? It was much better. Maybe he's a regular listener of the show, but who knows? But at the end of the day, Ryan Fraser, he did come in. Let's remember, Ryan Fraser arrived at Newcastle. He waited and waited. He thought he was going to get a move to Tottenham. Didn't happen. There was other teams linked with him. He eventually gave Newcastle an answer. Then he turned up and he said that he was going to be doing great things and putting the ball on a plate for Joe Linton, and how confident he was that he could drag Newcastle up the league, and he hasn't done it. He hasn't delivered. He did well the other night, no doubt about it. If that's a response to the criticism, let's see more of it in the last 10 games or so, and show everybody the good player that you said you were when you signed for the club.
What about young Elliot Anderson? Obviously, big things expected of him. He fit and raring to go. Should he be given a shot, do you think, against West Brom? I guess there's no possibly better teams to try yourself out against than some of the teams, beneath you in the league. So is this the time to give the young lad a shot in the first team?
Well, the debate will be whether I put him in from the start. He hasn't been on the bench in the last few games. He's back now. He's training with the team. He's been talked up at the training ground. Whether they start him or not, we'll have to wait and see. But he is an unbelievable talent, and anyone who knows his background will know that he's up. He's up for this, and he's going to be delighted if he gets that chance. Personally, if it was me picking the team, I would have him in. There's no doubt about it. I'd have him in from the start. But I think they might just err on the side of caution. Ryan Fraser could potentially go in that central role if they continue with the formation they've had. But we'll see. We'll see. It's certainly it's another option. We mentioned Gale, Carroll, Fraser, Anderson. There's some good options there. There's more than enough quality there to go to West Brom and get a result.
I wrote yesterday articles online that Steve Bruce needs to make sure that the preparation is about the players that they've got, not the players that they've lost, because at the end of the day, self-pity is not going to get you 3 points, is it? It's interesting, though, that you mentioned the formation there, because obviously Ryan Fraser came off and he played in that central role, came off the bench in that central role, and then he ended up putting the ball into the box and what have you. Obviously, he's more suited to the wing, and then you've got Dwight Gale who could come in, is more suited to the central role. Do you think they could switch formation to maybe suit them two players, especially someone like Gale who just doesn't look happy when he is out on that wide role? He needs to be in the centre, doesn't he?
Well, I would say so. He's a natural sort of goal scorer, if you like, and he needs to be in and around that 18-yard box. I mean, for me, playing him out wide is a waste. You're not going to get the best from him in doing that. So they may have to tweak things. But look, get the ball to his feet in and around the danger zone. I'm pretty sure he would have taken some of the chances the other night when Newcastle. That's what they needed, someone to convert. Sadly, for some reason, Dwight Gale, hasn't got the opportunity as much as he should have this season. Is it because of the contract delay? Who knows? But from his point of view, if you give him the ball in the right areas, he'll take the chance. He'll get you the win. And if there's one player who's going to be inspired by going back to Hawthorns, it's Dwight Gale. Where he's scored so many goals for the Baggies. So let's hope that there's a positive afternoon to report on for a change on Sunday.
I guess in many ways you've got the likes of Dwight Gale, you've got the likes of Jacob Murphy, who are going to be wanting to prove themselves, not just for the first team, but for that new deal as well. They've got to prove themselves in the eyes of, Lee, Charlie and Steve Bruce, that they're worthy of a new contract. So that's a bit of added motivation for them to, if they do get a chance, to really take it on Sunday.
Yeah, and then they need to grab it with both hands. There's no doubt about it. Andy Carroll, obviously, I was interested to see his interview the other day when he said, it's up to the gaffer. That suggested to me that he may have to wait for an opportunity from the start. It is crunch time for him in his Newcastle career. It's exactly like this time last year. Last year they gave him a contract probably because of the COVID situation, where it was going to be difficult in the transfer window, and they needed squad players in and around. Bringing Callum Wilson in, it's going to be problematic again the next window. But he has to go and show what he's got on the pitch. And if any player needed a couple of goals, it's Andy Carroll at the minute. And to be fair, I think he's actually scored a couple for Newcastle in the past at the Hawthorns. So hopefully, it's a chance for him to do likewise this weekend.
Who would you pick then, that forward three, to replace Miggy, to replace Almiron? Would you replace Joe Linton as well? What would be would you stick with the forward three? And if you are, who would you choose?
I mean, to be honest, Ryan Fraser, for me, if you put him in a central role, then I think that's a waste. He needs to be out wide. To be totally honest, I would have Joe Linton in the team, but in the wider role. I don't think he's a number 9. We've all had the discussion about his opportunity the other night. The majority of people said he should have scored. His best position is meant to be in that wider role where he played for Hoffenheim. So, at the end of the day, he's a competitor. He wins balls in the air. He does get tackles in. He does work hard. The only thing that's letting him down is goals, and that's been the big problem. But you can go back to the whole marketing argument. Why did they give him the number 9 shirt, for a start, and present him in that way when he's clearly does not look like a number 9? And three goals in 50 odd games is testament to that.
Another option for Steve Bruce could be to bring one of the Longstaffs or both back into the side. Sean Longstaff is impressed when he has been afforded that number 10 role. I think we think back to the game against Bournemouth when he unfortunately had to go off last season pretty early on after a really good start of that game where he was in that number 10 position. He's out in the cold. Both the Longstaffs out in the cold. We've just got Joanne asking you, what's happening with the Longstaffs at the moment?
Well, I haven't seen Sean Longstaff since the Sheffield United, the infamous 1-0 defeat at Sheffield United. And yeah, I think he got told to warm up the other night. That was the closest I've seen him get back to the action. Matty's had a little taste of it in recent weeks, but again, someone who hasn't had the games he expected this season. So it's one of them where we hope that they get an opportunity. But at the minute, it's where do you put them in, because you've got Willock there, you've got Shelvey there. And Shelvey actually, for me, did very well the other night, and it's an opportunity for him again. So we'll see. But both of them, if they get the opportunity, they'll give everything they've got.
Big Sam's record against Newcastle is pretty good. And I'm sure looking at this news here with the injuries to Miguel, you want to announce at Maxman, and then plus this bust up, West Brom probably will be rubbing their hands with the last couple of days. Looking ahead to Sunday.
Yeah, if there's one guy you don't want to bump into when you're in a relegation battle, it's Big Sam, and he'll be desperate to get that result. As I say, I think if they lose, then it is the end of the road for West Brom this season. They were very fortunate against Brighton that goal got disallowed, and then 2 penalty misses. So they got a lot of luck in that game. Hopefully, they've used it all up. But West Brom, as I say, it's an opportunity for Newcastle. They've got to get those 3 points they need. We all know that. There can be no excuses this time with a draw. Otherwise, Newcastle are just going to limp over the line. We've got one eye on tonight. Fulham could be in the relegation zone before we even get to the Hawthorns. So it's going to be difficult. But overall, I think it's a real opportunity now for Newcastle to to finally just try and put this relegation battle to bed in the next few weeks.
Yeah, Fulham play Spurs tonight, like you say. A win would land Newcastle in the relegation zone on goal difference. West Brom against Everton. They beat Everton. Would take them up to 20 points, so that would leave them 6 behind Newcastle going in to Sunday. If Newcastle don't win on Sunday, Lee, what does that mean for Steve Bruce? He's under pressure, but is it a case of a must-win for the safety of his job, or do you think he would carry on to the next game?
Well, everyone who said that in previous weeks has been wrong, saying that he was going to be on the brink. A point wouldn't be the end of the world from his point of view, because it will probably keep him going another week. A defeat is probably unthinkable, but again, it goes back to the argument. It depends on how precarious the board view the club's position going into what would be, the last 10 or 11 games. And, realistically, Steve Bruce, has he been living on borrowed time in recent weeks? Let's be honest, other clubs, he wouldn't be here anymore. But Newcastle, financial difficulties, they don't want to write the 7-figure check, which would, send them away in a very lucrative position. But realistically, from the club's point of view, the only person that would, be ready to come in and do the job at the minute is probably Graham Jones, who's come in as coach, and the players obviously like him. But at the end of the day, Steve Bruce is going to be judged by the people who employ him to keep Newcastle United up this season. And if he fulfills that, then he'd have a case for wrongful dismissal, because at the end of the day, that's what Newcastle asked him to do. Even if they got beat at the weekend, they'd still be with a chance of getting survival this season. So it's a very difficult position. But as I say, at other clubs, they would have made the change by now. They'd have a new manager in.
Another question then: how do you think Steve Bruce is going to handle, the last 24 hours tomorrow in the press conference? Because we know of late, the written press, yourself and the rest of the press pack, haven't really been allowed to ask that many questions. How do you think he's gonna take on board what's happened over the last 24 hours or so?
Well, I personally think the line that he will come out with is that everything that happens behind the scenes has to be dealt with in-house. I've seen managers in this situation saying that they want to see some passion from players who aren't playing. I think there could be a dose of that as well. I certainly don't think he's going to come out and slam Matt Ritchie for whatever has or hasn't been said. I can't see that personally. I think he'll definitely try and clip the answers. He will take the question. He'll have to, because his rights holder is going to be in there first. How many questions he takes from written press, we'll have to wait and see. It was only a couple after the Wolves game. It was only a couple before the Wolves game. The local written media have been put into what you could call restricted mode, where they haven't had the access that they had before the season, earlier in the season. We used to sit down for a good 45 minutes afterwards. That's been chopped right down to about 2 or 3 minutes now, with selected questions only. So we'll have to wait and see. I can't see it all being suddenly hunky-dory again and everyone getting a question. We'll have to wait and see.
Just finally, then, the story up on our website this morning, written by yourself, and it includes a few cheeky potential buyers of Newcastle United asking for a reduced price to take over the club.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens when when you're down there. People will take a chance and try and get something at that knockdown rate. They have had a couple of inquiries, where things stand, where would things stand if the club got relegated. That's all been battered away because they don't want to sell the club, for that knockdown rate. The preferred, bidders and buyers would be, of course, Amanda Staveley, Public Investment Fund, that sort of group. So we'll have to see, where that goes with the Premier League. But as far as selling it for 50 million quid or something like that, it's unlikely. That said, if they did end up getting relegated, which a lot of people are now saying they believe they will, then there's no way you're going to get 320 million for Newcastle United as a championship club. So it's a difficult time ahead in terms of on the pitch. But is the club still for sale? Yeah, it is, but it's not going to be for sale in the bargain basket.
You can read that piece over on chroniclelive.co.uk. Lee, thanks as always for joining us. To you guys watching and listening, thanks for tuning in yet again. Head over to the website and we'll keep you up to date with all the latest Newcastle United news.